Alright guys, welcome back to another video. So it's no secret that mirrorless technology or mirrorless cameras are kind of taking over. There are new mirrorless cameras being made every single day, improving technology every single day, and the DSLRs with all of the big manufacturers are not being refreshed or renewed. So what that means is eventually your DSLR is going to wear out. You're going to have to buy a new camera, and most likely it will be a mirrorless camera. So I wanted to make this video to share 5 things that I found to be kind of pain points when I first switched over to a mirrorless camera from a DSLR. Don't use your exposure simulation as a light meter. Use the information on your screen in your viewfinder. So in a lot of ways, the mirrorless camera is going to make your life easier. There is now the EVF. A lot of this stuff is pretty obvious, by the way. I just know that when I made these mistakes, I wish I had somebody just kind of pointing it out to me so that I would have it in the back of my head while I was shooting. So now with the EVF, the electronic viewfinder, you have a live view of what your exposure is about to look like. So my first inclination was to use that as my light meter. I see that it's not overexposed, it's not underexposed, but I lost track of all of my light meter, my camera settings, because I shoot in manual mode. And what happened was I came back to Lightroom, noticed there was a lot of blurry photos. So what was happening is I just kept bringing my shutter speed down to a place where I couldn't shoot a sharp photo handheld. So what I did to kind of practice and learn how to look at my settings more is there has an exposure simulation in the menu. For this example, I'm using a EOS R, but there is this option in all cameras. So you go to your menu, you click on exposure simulation. I'll put up on the screen what the Sony is called, but it's not called exposure simulation. But you can enable it and then, or disable it. So if you disable it, then your screen just shows whatever. No matter what setting you pick, it's like your DSLR. You have to pay attention to your settings. You have to pay attention to your light meter. I did this for 2 solid days and then switched it back on, and then I never made the mistake again. It'll save you from making a lot of unusable, blurry photos. So the next one is more of a new rule to avoid camera shake. So with a DSLR, the shutter rule that I used, I would set my shutter speed to double the focal length of the lens that I was using. So if I was using a 50mm lens, I would use 1/100th of a second or higher for my shutter speed. With a mirrorless camera, there's something that's going to happen that's inevitable. You're going to start using the LCD screen to take your photos instead of holding your camera up to your eye to take your photo. So what this does is you eliminate one point of contact, so you have less stability on your camera. So there will be more camera shake. I never thought that this would happen to me, but I find myself shooting using the LCD screen. It's just more convenient. With the DSLR, using live view to shoot photos, you know what it's like. It's super slow. It clicks and then you have to wait for it to reset. With a mirrorless camera, it shoots just as fast as you would holding your eye up to a viewfinder. So the new rule is look at your focal length of your lens and just use 4 times that for the shutter speed. So a 50mm lens would now be 1/200th of a second or higher to avoid the camera shake. The longer the lenses are, the faster your shutter speed is going to have to be. Trust me on this one, having the mirrorless camera definitely gives you the access to have higher angles, to be able to use touchscreen. I use the LCD more than I thought I would, and it's changed the way I shoot in a good way. It's also gave me a new set of rules. Okay, so the next thing is the autofocus system. The mirrorless system has definitely, I think, the superior autofocus system. Now the entire sensor can be a focus point, so you can put your focus points to the very edge of the frame. There's no longer that little grouping in the middle, and there is the new addition of eye autofocus. This doesn't work in large groups. I've tried this many times, and the camera finds whatever set of eyes it feels is most prominent. It picks up on that, it locks on, and then you can keep moving subject or eyes. A lot of cameras have a joystick. The R hat doesn't have one, but you can enable the screen to be able to be a joystick if you wanted to. It's what I do. So figuring out where your single point autofocus is and learning how to go into the menu, pick your single point autofocus, and just practice finding that, switching back and forth between eye autofocus and single point. It will save you a lot of time. I've tried many times, and it's just so frustrating having to go back and forth clicking the screen to find a different face. I know the technology is getting better where you're starting to be able to program in a certain face that it'll track no matter what. But for now, it's not that good. It's still great. It's still reliable. It still locks onto a face, and it's great for portraits. But if you're shooting big groups and they're on multiple planes, it's not the best thing to be using. The next one is for those event photographers out there that use the on-camera flash, and more specifically the red focusing beam. This is something that I relied on so much, especially in darker venues. So now the mirrorless cameras cannot see red. So the first event that I brought my EOS R2 was super dark. The autofocus does work in the dark, kind of, but it doesn't work that well, and I didn't want to take the chance. So I just used an iPhone flashlight to light up my subjects and then let the autofocus find the eye or use my single point. The workaround for this that I found a flash by Profoto that has a modeling light. So if I did find myself in a dark environment and needed to use the autofocus, I just turned the modeling light on. It's not as sneaky as the little red focusing beam. That is something that I really used. And the red light doesn't affect people's eyesight, which is something that I thought was really cool when shooting events. But this is a workaround that I found years ago. I haven't looked into it any further. There might be other options out there, but just know if you are switching from your DSLR with your on-camera flash that you use, the red light will not work. Next, go check out this video on how to freeze motion using an on-camera flash. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.